Okay. Magandang umaga, Ma'am Ichi. I'm just going to do an introduction. We have a room full of people fascinated to listen to what you have to say, and so I'll first of all I'll introduce you. So F.H Batacan Ichi is a Filipino journalist and a writer of crime and mystery fiction. She worked in the Philippine intelligence community for nearly a decade and later switched careers to journalism. She has covered both Philippine and international news in print, radio, and broadcast for over 20 years. She has won not one, but two Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature. We have a Palanca Prize winner in the room. Are you here, Par? Anyway, he's out at the moment. But each has done one better. She's won two, and including the 1999 Grand Prize for the English novel for her very first novel, Smaller and Smaller Circles, which I encourage everybody to read. Published in its original short form by the University of the Philippine Press here in 2002. It would go on to win the Manila Critics Circle National Book Award in 2002, as well as the Madrigal Gonzalez Best First Book Award in 2003. In 2008, her speculative fiction story, Keeping Time, won first prize in the English category of the 2008 Free Press Literary Awards. And in 2013, her crime fiction story, Comforter of the Afflicted, was published in Manila Noir, part of the Noir series by Brooklyn-based Akashic Books. She was signed on by literary agents, Books at Jacarinda LLP in 2011. They facilitated the sale of Smaller and Smaller Circles to New York City-based international crime fiction publisher Soho Press, which published it in 2015 as an expanded novel. It was later adopted into a feature film you may have seen, Smaller and Smaller Circles. Last year, 2024, she was awarded the Gawad Pampampansa Alagad ni Palagtas Lifetime Achievement Award for fiction in English by UMPIL. Her collection of short stories, Accidents Happen, will be released by Soho Press in March of this year. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce Ichi Batacan. Ichi.
Good morning, Dr. Heasley, and good morning to the organizers and participants of this very important summit. It's an honor to be asked to participate. I'm sorry I couldn't join you all in person today for various reasons, but I'm joining you from Singapore now, and this is the next best thing. When I was invited to this event, my first response was that I had neither the right nor the qualifications to be here, that there were far more worthy and qualified voices to be amplified at such an important gathering. But later I thought that perhaps I might have something to say, perhaps not very useful in terms of policy and solutions, but perhaps with some value in terms of the various perspectives I can bring. That of a lifelong but admittedly not so good Catholic, that of a former civil servant whose work was, partly to gather intelligence on corruption and malfeasance in government, of a journalist who tracked the stories of abuse in the church as they unfolded in the news over many years, and as a writer of crime fiction who, in spite of disappointment in the church, has chosen to make two of her protagonists Catholic priests. I was raised in a Católico Cerrado family and educated in an all-girls Catholic school. For most of my formative years, I was steeped in what I felt was the mystery and the majesty of Catholicism. I cried at every Catholic film shown on television during Lent. I thought firmly that if I couldn't be an apostle, I could at the very least become a priest. And I can't tell you how disappointed I was some years later, when I found out that that's not how it works in the Catholic Church. Um, I have lived most of my life. Um, I lived, uh, sorry, most of my life with my faith blissfully unchallenged and therefore unquestioned. The first challenge to my faith came of all sources from a Catholic nun, Jesuit trained, who taught me catechism in high school. She asked my class one day, if someone told you that the Immaculate Conception wasn't real, would it invalidate the core teachings of your faith? I thought long and hard about that question, and I still do more than 4 decades after it was first asked of me. What is the core teaching of our faith? To my mind, then, as a 16-year-old, and even more so now, it is stripped of all dogma and tradition and ceremony, simply to love, to serve, to care for one another as Christ taught us, particularly the smallest and the weakest and the least powerful in our society. In the recently released film Conclave, which I'm sure quite a few of you have already seen, there's a scene in which Cardinal Thomas Lawrence, played by Ray Fiennes, finds a damning report involving a candidate for the papacy. He shows this information to another candidate, Cardinal Bellini, played by Stanley Tucci, and Bellini urges him to burn the papers instead. He says, revealing this report, which accuses the Curia of institutional corruption, will harm the reputation not of the cardinal involved, but of the church itself. And to this, Cardinal Lawrence responds with what I felt was naive and heartbreaking faith. I thought we were here to serve God, not the Curia. And the underlying question there, and the answer that the question already carries within itself, I think, lies at the heart of the many challenges and issues we will be facing at this summit over the next few days, and indeed have been facing over the decades, in which the extent and the seriousness of child sexual abuse in the church has been gradually revealed. That to serve our fellow man is to serve God, and that the church, just like any institution created by man, must be accountable for the things it does and does not do. And where we, whether we're clergy or laymen, where we see that institutional and individual actions do not align with our faith's core teachings of love, care, and service, we must question them, challenge them, and demand accountability. Christ himself was a big, probably the biggest asker of questions and challenger of the society he lived in. In all aspects and spheres of life, in the home, in the workplace, in everyday traffic and commerce, in the drab offices of government, in the shiny halls of political and corporate power, and perhaps above all, in our places of instruction and worship, to question, to challenge, and to demand, accept, and practice accountability is to put those core teachings into concrete and visible action. Thank you very much, and I pray for a fruitful summit for everyone there.
Ichi, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can I begin? Can I begin the questions, and then I will hand it over as an open forum to the people here. So in your novel, Smaller and Smaller Circles, the hero of the story, one of the heroes is Father Sayans, who's a Jesuit pathologist and priest. And he has this confrontation at the end of the novel with Cardinal Menezes over his protection of a pedophile priest, featured in your novel. Cardinal Menezes says to Father Sayans at the epilogue of the novel, this is Cardinal Menezes, I worry deeply that our standards, our principles, our very foundations will be eroded by this openness that you so pursue. And Father Sayans responds to Cardinal Menezes, funnily enough, I worry for exactly the opposite reason. I worry that all this unwillingness to change, this secrecy, this unwillingness to evolve, to listen to, is eroding all we stand for, endangering everything we have vowed to protect and defend. Would that be a fair overview of your views, the characters that you created, that's the problem? That the institutional church is doing the wrong thing? And there are priests within the system who find it problematic.
Yes, I think there's a part in another part in the novel where the NBI director Lastimosa talks about um, the cleansing light of transparency. And I think whether you're in law enforcement or in government or in the church, that is true. Um, it's when you don't let sunlight into dark places, that's where rot and disease and mold grow. And I think that's an apt metaphor um, for what happened in the Catholic Church, where there was this atmosphere of secrecy. There was this sense of we must protect the church at the expense of uh, the very people it's supposed to protect. And I feel that very strongly in all my writing that all crime, all corruption, all societal rot thrives in secrecy and darkness.
Right. In fact, the Pope's motto proprio, Vos Estis Lux Mundi, insists on the shining of light, does it not?
Yes.
We are the light. You are the light of the world. Are you?
Yes, exactly. And as Catholics, as I said earlier, part of part of our responsibility is to hold our church accountable, to hold because there's no path forward, there's no solutions, there's no improvement without accountability.
Thank you, Ichi. I'm going to hand over to people in this room for the open forum. When anyone asks a question, can you please identify yourself, say where you're from, and Ichi will attempt to answer any question. Do we have any questions? Any questions you'd like to put to Ichi about what she's saying?
I just agree 100%.
Oh, well, you can say something to her. It's all good.
Yeah.
So just identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Susie Nauman. I'm a researcher with Bishop Accountability.
Hold on. Can you hear? Can you hear her?
Not
No, she
very
can't.
well.
She can't. Maybe to come up here. Yeah. Here you go. Here you go.
Hi. I'm Susie Nauman. I'm with bishopaccountability.org. And I just want to say what you said very much resonates with me. I agree 100%. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And the other phrase that comes to mind is you're as sick as your secrets. Children deserve to be protected. That's what this is all about. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, that's the thing that I think everywhere you go in the world, where there's secrecy, where there is a lack of transparency and a corresponding lack of accountability, there's always something wrong and something dysfunctional, something that needs to be addressed. And whether you're in government, whether you're in the workplace, that is true of every aspect of national life.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? And English, Tagalog, Bisaya, doesn't matter. We have translators here. Anyone else who would like to speak to Ichi? She's in Singapore. So we're going to have our president of ECA coming to speak to you. Gemma Hickey is going to have a interaction with.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being a part of our event. We really appreciate it. And as Susie said, I agree with all of the things that you said. There's a Canadian poet and musician that said, Leonard Cohen, there's a tiny crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. And I think that's true in so many ways. And I think this collective effort, events like this, are a tiny crack in a giant wall.
Yes.
And so the work is so important. And I wanted to also say that as a survivor of clergy abuse, it's really, really important for our allies to speak out, and especially working within. And I just wanted to thank you for your efforts and for your presence here today. And also say that, it's interesting when you talked about secrecy, because we've talked about that many times in our travels to Rome with Vatican officials, and people have talked to us when we've kind of let our guards down, all of us, right? Because there's generally not a space to even say you're sorry, or to kind of come together and remember our humanity. And regardless of our differences or wherever we come from, we all feel joy and pain, and we all feel angry, and we can unite on that alone. This is an important issue. And it's interesting. One of the comments that stuck out with me from someone who's very high up within the church was that talking about the culture of secrecy was, simply put, everyone has something on the other. And that might not be that they're a pedophile. It could be that they have a family. It could be that they have a male lover. It could be something or other. And if one person speaks out, then they're afraid the other person will speak out. And there's this shame, and it reinforces this cyclic type of culture, which is enshrouded in secrecy. So we're breaking that silence. And it's people like you that are doing that. So I just wanted to say, on behalf of Ending Clergy Abuse, and on behalf of myself and other survivors that I know that I work with, thank you for your efforts. That's all I want to say.
Thank you so much. There are two things that you said that I find quite significant. The first is the idea of a wall. And I've worked in very large organizations. I've worked in government. I've worked with, of course, with many large media organizations. And this idea of the organization or the institution being a kind of monolith, and how it's hard for, you know, it's just like moving a 16-wheeler and 18-wheeler truck. It's hard to maneuver. It's the same way with huge organizations where you have to do so much in order for even the smallest change to occur. And the other thing is that you know, the idea of little cracks in that monolith. I think that is where we as individuals have a role to play. And you were talking about um, like everyone has secrets, and I know this as well because having worked in a government intelligence agency, nobody was willing nobody was willing to say something against a certain group because that group had something on their group. Um, so it had to it has to take uh, a certain amount of courage to say, yes, I'm fallible. I have flaws as well. But there is something bigger than my flaws or your flaws that is at stake here. And that is where I think those little cracks that let the light in come through when each of us, whether we're part of the institution or whether we're, you know, participants or clergy or lay people, the acceptance, the humility that yes, I am fallible, I am flawed, and then the courage to say but. It's always the but that I think where I think we can force more of those cracks into the big monolith where we say but something is something bigger is at stake than our individual concerns and fears and shame.
That's beautiful, and I completely agree. And your comments actually reminded me of a quote from one of my favorite feminist um, poets and writers, a Black feminist, Audre Lorde. And she had said that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And so I had this conversation with my colleague Tim just the other day about cracks and tearing things down. And I'm a builder. I want to be a builder of people and communities. And I feel that there are so many good things happening within the church and so many good people who are working from within and trying their very best. And so I think the idea is, you know, what tools do we have? What tools do we have to rebuild ourselves and the institutions that we know have things to offer that can help, you know, and I think that that's important to remember as well. And so I'll keep building, and I know you'll be there building with me, and we all will. So thank you again, and I look forward to connecting more with you outside of this conference. Please keep in touch with us. Thank you.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gemma. Just a small question. In your novel, the pedophile priest that you have fleshed out there headed an organization called Kanlugan. Did you choose that name specifically as the problem with language? A shelter is the opposite of a shelter. In fact, it was a dangerous place because this guy predated upon children. Was that your creative choice for the name?
Yes, it was. The idea of uh, it, a safe haven where there was anything but safety. It was, I think, a conscious choice, and the irony of that, and the fact that it was being supported by so-called important people in our society, which is, um, I think, in much of my work, I deal with hypocrisy, the hypocrisy of society, the hypocrisy of Sunday Catholics who are, they're prominent people and they're in government or they're in positions of power, and they come to church with their veils and their rosaries, and but the rest of the day, Monday to Saturday, the rest of the week, Monday to Saturday, they're doing everything that is the opposite of um, what they profess on Sundays. And yes, that I think that was definitely a conscious choice.
And you made the point that the wealthy people that funded this organization expelled the priest, not because he was abusing children, but because of estafa, that he was taking money. That's what annoyed them, not the predation.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes. It's the again, going back to the idea of hypocrisy. Um, they may they may have thought it looked better for them to act against the priest, but the real motivation was that they were unhappy with where their money was going. So I find that could be true in our society, where people really people in positions of power and who have a lot of wealth and money, um, they won't really act in the interests per se of the weakest, but they will act when it aligns with their own interests, and that is something that I feel is at the root of all our, I mean, our society's ills, is that the powerful will only act in the interest of the weak and of the downtrodden when their interests align with their own. So um, there's very few. I think we can point to very few examples where that's not the case.
Okay. So when you published your novel, Ichi, very controversial with a sexually predating pedophile priest, did you suffer any social consequences for that? Did you, in your own personal life, did you any pushback? Anybody found it objectionable? Because it was quite revolutionary, was it not, to be discussing such a topic in literature?
I'm glad to say that I didn't, but that was partly because by the time the first version of the novel came out, I was already working in a very secular society like Singapore.
Yes.
Um, I I was far away from any um, pushback, blowback. From Philippine society. But I will say that one particular group, through friends, I'm not directly in touch with them. I know through friends who are that the Jesuits have been quite supportive of the novel, and I think even some teachers teach the novel in
Yes.
university.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes. Yes.
that's been. I have to say I'm not particularly concerned about whatever people, if people think it's controversial. I I know what I believe, and um, again, in all the work that I've done, whether it's professional or whether it's in fiction, uh, I want daylight to come through the cracks, whether it's in my fiction or in my professional life.
So, Kieran, so Kieran Tapsell is an Australian who's just had a second edition of his book, Potiphar's Wife, The Secrets of the Vatican. Is now going to ask you some questions. He's coming to the podium now.
It's more not so much a question, but to actually compliment you on using art and literature to get across this sort of message. It's one thing to write a book about canon law, which as a subject most people would find incredibly boring. But nevertheless, I think where art and literature comes in is that that's where the real message gets across to ordinary people. Murray mentioned this extraordinary situation in Ireland. Who would have even thought that there would ever be a gay prime minister? Was elected, 5 or 6 years ago. But it's people like John Boyne and authors like that really have moved people from in Ireland, and I'm sure that you're doing the same thing. I have to admit I haven't read your book, but I will now. Tomorrow I will be speaking, and your mention of hypocrisy is canon law and practice has been riddled with hypocrisy, unfortunately. And I just seen the movie The Conclave, and I must admit I agreed 100% with that conclusion. It's not God really, it's the church. Somehow or another, something has to be done about that, and that will only come from the bottom up, because it's never come from the top down. Thank you.
That's true. Absolutely true.
Okay, so the most important part of that comment is that Kieran needs to buy your book. And I'm now enjoining everyone in this room to please read the book. It's a wonderful novel. The characters in it are, including the NBI director, amazing figures. And it shows the problems in civil government as well, and the corruption in civil government. Anyone else like to ask a question, Ichi? So Tim Law, who's the treasurer of ECHA, is now coming to ask you some questions. Are you still okay, Ichi? All right? No problem?
Yes,
All right.
all
Thank you,
good.
man.
All good. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Ichi. And once again, I don't have any questions, but a comment that I was reflecting on your the teacher, the nun that posed that question, and how that has informed your life, your thinking, and coming to a point where it's love and compassion, especially for the most vulnerable. That's the key, and holding people accountable, especially the church, so I would think that nun, if you were to encounter her now, would say, you're not far from the kingdom of God. And I too was educated by the sisters, by Jesuits, and they gave me a sense of social justice. I wouldn't be here today without the church, and without that training. And I see sisters here today, and how important that work and their work is. But I just we all find it ironic that the church has all brought us into this room, but they're not following what they taught us, and so we get the opportunity now to challenge the church to do what they taught us, and we get ourselves out front and doing this work, and then all of a sudden we feel alone, and we look behind us and they're not there, and so having a group like this to be able to hold each other and encourage each other is very important. So thank you for your work and for your compassionate work. Thank you.
Thank you. I find it very interesting that you talked about these things, because there's an actress called Alex Borstein, and she's she's uh, she's won an Emmy, several Emmy awards on American television. And in one of her acceptance speeches, she talked about how she was um, the granddaughter of an Auschwitz survivor, or one of the concentration camp survivors. And she tells the story in that acceptance speech of her grandmother, her baba, um, asking. They were all lined up again, around the pit to be shot. And she tells the story of how her grandmother said to one of the Nazi guards, said, "What happens if I step out of line?" And then the guard, who was apparently quite young, said, "Well, I don't have the heart to shoot you, but someone else will." But she stepped out of line anyway. And for some miraculous reason, she was spared. And Alex Borstein ended her acceptance speech with, "Step out of line. Everyone must step out of line." And I think that is what we are called to do, is to step out of line and to have the courage, because I firmly believe as a Catholic that the very seeds of our redemption as a church from this scandal also lie within us. It cannot be that someone from the outside will affect the change that we want to see. It has to come from us, bottom up, and eventually bottom up, and then the people at the top will realize. And I really believe that we hold the seeds of our own redemption.
Thank you very much, Ichi. Do we have any other questions that anyone would like to put to this wonderful lady? So, Ichi, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your appearing here. I know that you recently had a near-death experience, and I'm so glad you're still above ground in the land of living with you and me, and that you were able to attend here today. Your contribution is immeasurably important, because we have a multi-focus lens here. Here we have a novelist. We will have people from all walks of life presenting here, authors, people from different backgrounds. And it's very important that we have this multi-focus lens to be able to elaborate and to show the situation from a range of backgrounds. But the one unifying thread is we are here to protect children and to ensure that children are not harmed. That's our sole purpose, our goal here. It's not to antagonize, it's not to point the finger, it's to ensure that that change becomes embedded in this church. And the church is not the institutional church, it's the people of God since Vatican II. So thank you, Ichi. Pleasure. I'm going to say goodbye. How's Singapore? You're happy today?
Yes,
Good.
all good.
All right,
Thank
Ichi.
you so much.
So we're just going to give you a round of applause. Goodbye, Maminga.